Hey everybody, it's Dana. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of watercoloring with the Arteza, I believe that's how you say it, Real Brush Pens today. And I'm also going to be using their water brushes. I have a pack, I believe, of 6 of these, and I'm going to be using 2 of them today. So let's go ahead and get started. For my image today, I'm using a very pretty floral stamp from Concord in 9th. And for my watercolor paper, I'm using some Canson watercolor paper. All right, so I'm using the Blackout ink from Ink on 3 to stamp my image today. Now, because this is textured watercolor paper, I'm going to make sure that I stamp this a few times. And that's just because with watercolor paper, especially if it's cold pressed watercolor paper, it has a lot of texture to it. So I'm going to make sure that I get an even impression on this by stamping it a few times. Now, since I have my image all ready, I can go ahead and remove that from my MISTI. Now, to keep my paper from bowing or warping as I watercolor this, I'm just going to use some low tack artist tape and just tape this down to my grid mat. I could not find my watercolor board today, so I'm just going to go ahead and tape it right on down to my craft mat. And this is just going to keep it from bowing as I watercolor. Now, since I have everything done, I went ahead and zoomed in to give you the focal point perspective as a watercolor. Now, I did speed this up so you guys didn't have to see me do it in real time because it did take me just a little bit to watercolor this. So I'm going to go ahead and wet my paper or my image first before I actually bring the markers to it. Now, these markers are very similar to other Real Brush markers that are on the market right now, but I will have to say I really like these markers. I like how easily they flow with water. Now, I know sometimes I'm a little bit challenged on using these markers compared to if I'm using my Daniel Smith watercolor tube paints or like pan paints. But these markers, I will have to say, really blend well. So as you can see, I can get a really soft gradient color with these Real Brush markers. And I really like the softness I can get. Now, I'm just laying down some really soft color. I'm not worried too much about contrast or anything at this moment. I'm just actually wanting to get some of the color down on the paper. So this here is a really pretty shade of pink, and I'll make sure to link all the colors that I used. Now, this set that I have here, there are 24 colors in this set. Now, I do believe that they also have a set that is 48 colors, and I think maybe a 12. Don't quote me on that one, but I think they have a smaller pack as well. So now I'm going to let that one sit there, and I'm going to clean off my brush, and I'm just cleaning it off with a paper towel. And the cool thing about that pen, that watercolor pen, is that there's a little button on the side that says that you can push, and that gives you the option to squirt more water out or to clean your brush. So now I'm going in with a light green, and I believe there's 3 greens in this pack. I'm going in with like the medium tone of the green. And again, I'm just laying down a nice quick wash of that green color. And usually I work, when I'm watercoloring, I usually work with a paint brush, not usually with one of these like watercolor pens. But I actually have to say, I really like this. The nibs on this pen or the brush on these pens are really flexible. They're not really like coarse, and they bend very well. So I will have to say I actually like these water brush pens as well. So now I'm going to go in with a really pretty shade of orange, and I'm going to go ahead and color that and wash that out. I'm adding a decent amount of water to this first go around just because I want to lay down just some simple color. Now I'm going to come in and just add some contrast colors. And I'm not going very heavy with these markers. I'm just wanting to add a nice little soft color on this image. And I'm just putting down a little bit more of the marker without really using a lot of water. But as you can see, they're very pretty. I really like the intensity and then the softness I can get. And I'm getting that by the amount of water that I'm using. So I'm coming back in on that rose and adding a tad bit more of that gorgeous pink. Now I am going to blend this out with my water brush, just because I don't want the lines to be really harsh on this. So I am going to bring my water brush back in and just blend that color out. But as you can see, these markers work really well on blending on this cold press watercolor paper. So now, since I have that done, I do want to add a little bit more orange, because this really is a very soft orange. I do want to add a little bit more orange to that one flower. And then again, I'm going to blend that back out. Now, since I have that, I do think I want to add a tad bit more of a darker orange right towards the center. So I just grabbed another one of the markers that are in that set to deepen that up. And now I'm going to grab one of the purple colors and just put those on those tiny little flowers. Now, those flowers are really small, so I'm not going to add any more purple or darkness to those because it's a really tiny flower. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my water brush and smooth that out. And now I'm going to use a gray. And that is just so I can ground my image. I'm just going to move that tape and get that out of the way, because I don't want my flowers just to look like they're floating in the air and just in space like. So I'm just going to ground them by using a very nice, I believe this was Dove Gray. And the one thing about these markers, I will have to say, I like that they do have colors on the side of them. Sometimes some of these markers do not have colors on the side, so you really don't know what color you're using. I'm going to quickly heat set this part because I'm done with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and heat set this really quickly. Now I'm going to come in with one of the larger brushes, and I'm going to wet down my paper, and I'm going to come in with a blue. And I'm just going to mix it up with some water just on my acrylic block, just to get a really soft blue. And now I'm just going to add a little bit of a background to this panel. I just didn't want the top of my panel to just be white, stark white. So I'm just going to add in like a little bit of a sky color just to put around my flowers. As you can see, this is a very easy image to color. And as you can see, adding more or less water to these markers really helps with the intensity or the softness. So now, since that's done, I'm just going to go ahead and heat set everything and make sure everything's dry before I remove the tape. So as you can see, I have a very pretty watercolor image here, and now I can very gently fold back the tape on itself. Remember to do that so you don't tear your paper. And I can pull that off. And look how wonderful this image is colored. Isn't that pretty? A nice little soft background, because I don't want it to overpower my flowers, but I don't want it to be stark white either. All right, now since I have everything colored up, I want to go ahead and stamp out my sentiment. So I'm going to use 2 of the sentiments out of the Concord and 9th stamp set, one on top of the other. So I'm going to line them up the way I want them, but I'm not going to stamp them together. So it says happy birthday. So I know that's where I want it to be, but I really want that happy to be a little bit closer to that birthday. So when I go to stamp it, I'm only going to stamp the birthday first. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the same ink, which is my ink on 3. This is the Blackout ink, but I'm going to go ahead and pull that happy off of my MISTI lid and just stamp out the, it says happy everything. I'm sorry, not happy birthday. Happy everything. And I'm going to stamp this again a few times because remember, I'm working with textured paper here. So I want to make sure that I have my sentiment is very crisp. So I'm going to stamp that about 3 times just to make sure that the ink is getting down into the grooves of that paper. So next I'm going to put that happy back in, and now you can see I can get closer to that everything sentiment. Now I have that exactly where I want it, and now I can go ahead and close my MISTI lid, and I can go ahead and stamp that. I just put them together just so I can have it lined up in the beginning, but because of the thickness of the stamp, I could not get that as close as I wanted it. So now I'm just going to go ahead and stamp that one more time, and now I have it perfectly the way I want it. So now since I have everything stamped out, I can go ahead and remove it out of my MISTI. Now I went ahead and mounted this on some fog cardstock just because I didn't want to put it on my white card base. I'm using my Perfect Layers tool just to make sure that I mat this correctly. And I'm using the 16th inch on this, so I have an even border all the way around this watercolor image. And I'm using fog because I don't want to have a very strong contrast color with this really soft watercolored image. So I'm just going to go ahead and spin around my panel here, and using just an X-Acto knife and my Perfect Layer ruler, I'm going to have a perfect border all the way around. Isn't that pretty? I will make sure to link that below as well. Now since I have my panel done, I can go ahead and mount that on my card base. And like you guys always hear me say, I always use Nina 110-pound white card bases. I can go ahead and pop that onto the center. Now I'm not going to put a lot more on this because I really want my watercoloring to be like the star of my card today. But of course, you guys know me, I have to have just a couple little sequins on here. I'm really not going to go heavy-handed on these sequins, but I do want to add, you know, just a few to this card just to give it a tiny bit of sparkle. That is actually going to wrap up the card for today, you guys. I will have a link below listing all of the products I use, but also a link for you guys to pick up some of these Arteza Real Brush Pens and also the watercolor brushes. I do believe that they would be a great addition to all of your watercoloring. And that is going to be the card for today. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Please make sure if you like this, give me a thumbs up and go ahead and share as well. Don't forget to subscribe. I will see you guys in another video very, very soon. Happy Monday to everybody and have a great day. See you soon. Bye-bye.